Previously on A Love That Lingered, Grace's life at Caldwell Manor began like a slow and careful waltz. She met Oliver, who became her confidant and guide, and found kindness in Arthur's mother, who welcomed her as family. Arthur, though often burdened with his duties as head of the Caldwell estate, treasured every moment he could spend by her side. This is episode 11, The Quiet Bloom. Winter had come and gone, melting into a tender spring that softened the manor's edges. The fields beyond the great white estate wore a haze of green, and the scent of lilac drifted through open windows. 6 months had passed since Grace first walked its halls in the light of day, and she knew every creak of its floors, every draft that snuck under its doors. Her days fell into a rhythm: mornings in the garden, afternoons with Oliver or helping the staff, evenings often drifting toward the quiet sanctuary of Arthur's office. He was rarely idle. His desk seemed forever buried under letters and ledgers. But Grace had learned that being near him, even in silence, brought her a comfort that words couldn't match. Arthur, in turn, had grown used to her quiet presence. He'd glance up from his work and find her curled into the corner armchair, reading or embroidering, a faint smile playing at her lips. And though he longed to cross the space between them, to bridge that gap with something more than clasped hands and glances, he held himself back. For Arthur Caldwell had learned, through loss, through grief, that rushing a delicate thing could shatter it entirely. Their bond deepened in small, unremarkable moments. Grace would bring tea to his desk when he worked too long without pause, sliding the cup onto the blotter with a knowing look. Arthur would take her walking through the gardens, pointing out the young roses and the path where the nightingales sang. When she laughed, truly laughed, he felt it like a thread tugging at the seams of his heart. Yet for all their closeness, an invisible line still lay between them. Arthur would walk her to her room at night, his hand warm around hers, only to release it at her door as though the next step was one he dared not take. Grace, for her part, noticed. She noticed the way his eyes lingered when he thought she wasn't looking. She noticed the gentle restraint in his every movement, as though he feared scaring her away. One rainy afternoon, the manor was hushed, save for the steady patter against the windows. Arthur was deep in correspondence when Grace slipped into his office. She didn't speak, only settled into the armchair by the fireplace with a book in her lap. After some time, she looked up to find him watching her, not with the distracted fondness she was used to, but with something more searching. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. But Arthur only smiled faintly and returned to his work, the moment folding quietly away. The days grew longer with the season, and soon summer evenings found them lingering together after supper. Sometimes in the library, sometimes in the drawing room. Tonight, it was the parlor, the golden glow of the fireplace casting warm light over them both. They sat together on the settee, not touching but close enough that Grace could feel the faint heat radiating from him. Outside, the night pressed soft against the windows, the flames popping gently in the hearth. Arthur had been telling her of a trip to the city. Necessary business, though he admitted reluctantly that it meant days apart. Grace listened quietly, but a faint ache coiled in her chest at the thought. "You'll be back before I have the chance to miss you," she said softly, though the words were more hope than truth. Arthur smiled, but there was a trace of guilt in it. I wish I could take you with me, but it's complicated. Grace didn't press. She'd learned that with Arthur, patience was often the surest way to reach him. But tonight, as the firelight caught the edges of his face and the stillness of the room wrapped around them, she felt the invisible line between them like a tether pulled taut. Her fingers tightened slightly in her lap, and then, almost without thought, she shifted closer. Arthur's breath caught, just barely audible, but he didn't move away. Grace tilted her head, searching his eyes. They were darkened not with uncertainty, but with something deep and long held back. Her heart thundered, but the fear she expected to feel never came. She leaned in and pressed her lips softly to his. For a moment, he was still, frozen, as though afraid the slightest movement would break the spell. Then slowly, Arthur's hand rose to cup her cheek, his touch gentle as though she were made of porcelain. The kiss was unhurried, almost tentative, but it held the weight of months of quiet longing. When they parted, Grace saw something in his gaze she hadn't before, a mix of joy and quiet awe. The fire crackled, casting shadows across the room. Arthur didn't speak, and neither did she. The silence between them was not awkward, but full of what had just been given and could never be taken back. He brushed his thumb along her cheek before lowering his hand, though his eyes never left hers. Grace smiled faintly, and Arthur returned it. But there was a flicker, so brief she might have imagined it, of fear behind his expression. For Arthur Caldwell knew that once a line was crossed, there was no going back. And somewhere deep in his chest, a quiet voice whispered that this love, was a fragile, dangerous thing.